Hi, Michael Bettine here, and today we're going to have part 2 of the Cuppa Time Book Club, looking at some further books that have influenced me over my long career and helped me out in a lot of different ways. We're going to dive sort of deep into books that move out of the music realm that I have found fascinating and found to be a lot of help. First, we got a couple music books, but then most of them are out of the music realm, but I think they're very relevant. And this is the thing that I really believe in, is that, everything I do is just a part of a whole. Besides being a musician, I've been a professional journalist for about 40 years. I've written hundreds of magazine articles. I've written various books. I've also done a lot of teaching. And all these sort of things just come together. And they're really, to me, just variations of the same thing, which is they're variations of me. And I just express them in different ways. I express them through music. I express them through words. I express them through talking and doing videos like now and things like that. Okay, the first one I want to look at is a book I came across last summer. It's a recent release. And this is Butterfly Wings, Gong Sound Transformation by Martin Bläse. And he is the amazing silversmith who has ventured into making gongs and bell plates, trigons, and all sorts of other fantastic instruments. This is just an amazing book. It's really well put together. Let's see, how big is this one? This is like 352 pages. It's full of amazing photos and descriptions of his work. And he's a third generation silversmith. And both his father and grandfather had made some gongs in the past. So he made some gongs and really got into the whole sound thing. So he describes his journey into making gongs and other sound instruments. And if you're really interested in these amazing instruments that we use, this is a great book because it really speaks from the gong maker's soul, the gong maker's side of things. And I found it incredibly fascinating to hear about, his ideas, his concepts, how he makes things and all that. And there's so much that goes into making any of these wonderful instruments, whether you're in Europe or Asia, America, South America, anywhere, making fantastic gongs and bells and bowls and that. There's a lot that goes into it. So I cannot recommend this book too much. Butterfly Wings by Martin Bläse. Now, it's an expensive book. This cost me like $120 to get a copy of this. You can order it directly from Martin, or here in the States, you can get it through Gongs Unlimited. I'll have links, again, for all the books that are still in print and available down below. Now, just to give you an example, if you don't really know Martin or his work, he makes these amazing instruments called trigons. These beautiful little bells, little bronze bells. And I have the whole planetary box of these standard ones. He makes larger ones. He makes bell plates that are tuned to the planets and that. Amazing work, amazing craftsmanship. Here, we'll just play another one, a different note. This one is the sun. So I really think his stuff is just superb as far as the quality, the workmanship, and most importantly, the sounds. So that's Martin Bläse, and the book is Butterfly Wings. So Really, I cannot recommend that book enough because it's just an amazing book. What we would call a coffee table book, really. It's just big, lots of photos, lots of information. Okay, so now let's move out of the music realm for a bit. I'm drinking Irish breakfast tea right now. It's not just for breakfast. I drink it all day long sometimes. About 20, I guess I need to go into a story here. About 22 years ago, the end of the millennium, 1998, 99, in that area, I was really at a crossroads. I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I wasn't making the music I wanted to do. I wasn't doing the writing I wanted to do. I just wasn't really producing the art that I had up here and here. And I was feeling blocked. And I was just feeling like I had nowhere to go and nowhere to turn. And I found 3 books that really made a difference in my life and in my craft here. The first one, this is probably one of the best books for jump-starting your art. If you're stuck out there, no matter what type of art you do, music, dance, painting, writing, anything, I can't recommend this enough. This is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And this is probably the most famous book of its type. And I got it, let's see, when did this thing come out? In 92. I probably got it like 96, 97 or something like that. An amazing book. And it's a workbook. It's a process book. And you can even see, if you can kind of see it's just full of bookmarks here. And I worked through this book numerous times. And even back then, before there was all the Facebook, Instagram, and all these other groups, there were online groups working with this book. And they do like a chapter a week. And I was involved in one group, and I stayed with the group and went through the book twice. And it really helped me to just get a grasp on who I was and what I wanted to do and how to do it, how to take that first step and really get going to doing what I want, which you can see all this stuff here. I'm doing exactly what I want today. I've never been happier. I mean, I'm playing lots of sessions and gigs, doing lots of recording, doing a lot of great writing and all this. And I owe so much of it to this book. And it's a very concise method, going by weeks. And Julie, let's see, how many weeks are there in here that they go through? They go through 12 weeks. And they give exercises and ideas. And the idea is you really do work with it. And you can get it an accompanying workbook too if you want to use that to write in. I just use notebooks. But The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity by Julia Cameron. And back then I had all her books and read them all and worked through all of them. And it really helped me define. I think that was the biggest thing, is trying to define, what do I really want to do at this point in my life? What do I want to do? You know, I've done all kinds of stuff. I played in rock bands and jazz bands and country bands and stuff. And I was tired of that. And I really wanted to do something else. And it helped me define what I was doing and then how to pursue it. So this is a great book. And it, like I said, it's good for people working in any sort of artistic discipline. Another one I really liked back then, this is Trust the Process, An Artist's Guide to Letting Go by Shaun McNiff. Let me get that so it's not too shiny. This is another great book from about the same time period. Let's take a look here, from 1998. So I probably bought this right after it came out. And it goes through similar territory. Shaun McNiff is a PhD, and he's an artist, and he does all kinds of art therapy and things. He's written quite a few other books, but this is really good to get you to trust yourself and the process of creating and, whatever art you're doing. So this is Trust the Process by Shaun McNiff. Really great book. Now, as a writer, I came across Eric Maisel, who is also a writer, and he's written numerous books, and I believe he had a really good blog for a while and all kinds of things. And I have read most of his books, but the one that really affected me the most is called Deep Writing: 7 Principles That Bring Ideas to Life. And it's a book about writing, but you can take these ideas and apply them to music or whatever artistic discipline you use. And there's another one that you can really work through as sort of a workbook, but he's also a psychologist, I believe. And so he brings stuff from a whole different perspective. Julia Cameron's an artist. Shaun McNiff is a professor, and Eric Maisel is, I believe, a psychologist. So these 3 books kind of approach the same idea of how do I get what's in here out there, and how do I make everything happen, but from 3 different perspectives. And they're really great books. And I would say that, 23, 24 years ago, at the end of the 90s, these 3 books had a really great impact on me and getting me to really, like I said, define what I wanted to do, believe in what I wanted to do, and then figure out how to make it happen. And doing it now. So these books really work. Okay, let's get more into the scientific end of things. Now, one of my big interests is time. And I see when we were working with gongs and bowls and bells and that, part of what we were doing is working with time. Now, I did a master class called Arcs of Time at the very first Gong Summit in Connecticut in 2019. And I presented, some of my ideas about time and how we can use it playing these instruments here, gongs and stuff. I'm working on a further ideas with that and putting together a book based on time and my ideas on time and how we can use time. So it's a much more expanded version of my workshop. So I'm working on the book. One of the books that crossed my path that I really liked, that I think explains time and what it is in just a real straightforward manner, is The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli. He's an Italian physicist, and he's written quite a few interesting science books and physics books. And this one, again, you can see I've got like all kinds of notes in here, little stickers. It's an amazing book talking about time, how we relate to time, and how time, creates the world we live in. So The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli. And, if you look him up, some of his other books are just as fascinating. He is able to take deep physics ideas and that and really make them accessible. You don't have to have, a minor in physics or something to understand what he's talking about. The next few books are more philosophical. The first one is Zen in the Art of Archery by Eugen Herrigel. Very, very famous book. It's a short book. It's only about 80 pages long. But the author was a professor of philosophy in Tokyo. And he took up the study of archery with a Japanese archery master in order to better understand Zen Buddhism. Now, this could easily be called Zen in the art of gong playing or something. You can take the same ideas from archery and transpose them over to playing gongs and bowls and things like that. It's not too dissimilar from other books like The Inner Game of Golf, The Inner Game of Tennis, things like that. But this is a much more Zen philosophy type book. But it's a great book. For me, it got me thinking outside of myself and thinking more about just the flow of everything. And also not thinking, getting out of my way when I'm playing. So my head isn't always full of this mallet, this gong, this bowl, do this, that, but just more getting the process down. So Zen in the Art of Archery. Very famous book, fabulous, quick read. I think everybody should have it. This next one is by Arnold Mindell, who's written a lot of really great books, especially about dreaming, working with dreams and things. This is called The Shaman's Body, a new shamanism for transforming health, relationships, and the community. And this book is about 30 years old. I don't know if there's an updated version of it or not, but Dr. Mindell is a psychologist, and he's done a lot of studies in various forms of shamanism and dream time studies and things like that. I found this fascinating in much the same way as the Zen and Archery book, in that it got me to think outside of this body and think more out here and learn how to move out here instead of everything being here, and especially being up here. I think a lot of times we stay in our heads, and not just with playing gongs, as being just a musician in general. Sometimes there's almost too much in my head. So these books really help me move out of that into more of a flow and getting to have that whole flow process, and that I'm just being, I'm just existing, I'm just playing. I'm not being a technician. I think sometimes as a musician who's had a lot of training, sometimes you can get stuck in that training. I've known some really amazing players, and you go listen to them and it just sounds so mechanical. They have such amazing technique, but there's no heart, It's just all technique. And I've personally known a few drummers like that, and they were just like, wow, your jaw would drop because they could play all kinds of stuff. But there was no soul. There was no heart in it. It was just all technique. So these two books have really helped me move out of that idea of being a technician into just being a musician, an artist, a player. And I'm not saying technique, you don't need technique, because if you've seen a lot of my other videos, they're about technique. How do you hold a mallet? How do you play a mallet? How do you do this? How do you do that? And I'm always telling you to practice, work on your craft. So I think, technique is supremely important. But when we're up there actually playing our instruments, creating the sounds, creating the music, you have to move beyond the technique. And at that stage, the technique has to become internal. It has to become instinctive. So these two books are really good for that and just getting you out of your head. I really like that. Now, an actual music book, that's fairly interesting. It is more of coming from a science standpoint, is The Power of Sound by Joshua Leeds. How to manage a personal soundscape for a vital, productive, and healthy life. And I got this a long time ago. It has a CD with it. New versions probably come with a download code or something. But he talks about sound and how to use it. I'm not sure when this was written. He's written a couple other books. He's actually a musician. 2001. Okay, so I got this right after it came out, I'm sure. And let's look at some of the chapters here, just to give you an idea of the things he explores. Awareness of sound, frequency medicine. We all love that idea of frequency in that. The physics of sound, the mechanics of hearing, resonance and entrainment, neural developmental auditory training. So he talks about the work of other people. Sonic safety, music and sound in your life, the building blocks of therapeutic sound, the anatomy of psychoacoustic music creation, stress-induced auditory dysfunction. So he's getting into more the scientific end of things. And I don't know if there's an updated version. I haven't checked on that, but I'll look because, like I said, this is 20 years old now. This is real legit studies. He's actually spent a lot of time researching this. This is just not opinion of his or anecdotes. This is actual scientific study from 20 years ago. And I found a lot of it valuable. Some of it, not so much, but that's the way it is with a lot of books like this. So this might be worth looking up and giving a read. The Power of Sound by Joshua Leeds. Okay, so those are books, over the past 20 some years that I've read and used, some of them extensively, and really have guided me on my path to be where I am today. And here I am. I'm making the videos. I teach master classes. I play, 4 to 6 times a month. I do a lot of writing, all this stuff. So, I've really worked hard to get to this point. Now I want to look at 3 books that a lot of people talk about, but I don't think are necessary or that important. The first one is The True Power of Water, Healing and Discovering Ourselves by Masaru Emoto. Incredibly famous book about him talking to water and all this sort of stuff and making water come alive and, how your thoughts and projections can change things. It's a good book to read. I think there's a lot of good information, but I don't think it's indispensable because a lot of what they found is the effects don't last. And that's the big thing. You can talk to snowflakes and water crystals and say, I love you and you're beautiful and things are great and groovy and all, and take photos of them and they look amazing. And then you can talk, you're crap, I hate you, blah, 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 to other ones and take pictures and they look terrible. You can do that all you want, but apparently the big thing is that effect doesn't last. It's temporary. So that's not to say there's no value in it. But I think a lot of people read his works and really make them more important than what they are. Interesting studies. I think there needs to be further studies on this. It's like other things you see on the internet or Facebook or whatever. There was a recent one of somebody doing blood studies and playing gongs, before the blood cells before playing gongs and then the blood cells after. Well, there's a change. Okay, that's really fine. But how about 3 hours later or the next day? Everything seems to revert back to its original state. So all of this idea of working with sound and intent and everything is really great. I don't think we've gotten to the point where it's sustainable. It's like, does somebody need to come have a Gong session every day or once a week to sort of cure whatever's happening? So a good book, an interesting read. I love the book, but it's just like, I don't think you should put too much faith into it. Now, here's a very, very famous book. Back in the early 2000s, I had numerous yoga teachers at the studios I was playing at recommend it to me. Oh, you have to get this book. It's really great. This is the Book of Chakras, Discover the Hidden Forces Within You by Amica Waters. Incredibly famous book. Really well put together. A lot of nice pictures. A lot of nice information. I mean, let's look here. A lot of color. I mean, look at this. Here's the chakras. I mean, it's interesting. Put it that way. I guess if you really have your work based on the chakras and the tunings and the colors and all that other chakras, you'll find this to be like, wow, this is the book. And perhaps you already base your work off of this book. But this book is based on faulty work in the past. I mean, the whole chakra idea and the tunings and everything there, it's faulty work. Sorry to say that. That's what I have found in my work and my research. A lot of it is, again, Western man, European man, American man, whatever you want to call it, white people putting their ideas on top of ancient traditions from other countries. In this case, mainly India and the yoga and chakra traditions there, and taking the Western scale of 12 notes, like on a piano, and sticking them on top of the chakras and saying, oh, this chakra is a C, and this one is a B, and all that. And it's just, and frequencies, and it vibrates at this frequency of the note. I'm sorry, I don't believe in any of that. I don't think it's of value. I think going down that road, it's a dead end. So I'm sorry. That's my feeling. That's my opinion. You're certainly free to think otherwise. So this book, The Book of Chakras by Amica Waters. Kind of fun to read. There's some really good stuff. I think there's a picture of Sting from the Police in here. I mean, it's a pretty cool book, but you really have to look at the information in there and kind of, weed through it and find something that's worthwhile. Now, the next book I couldn't find my copy of. It's somewhere in my library, but I will talk about it just shortly because I had a question about what about The Healing Power of the Gong by Johannes Heimrath, which was written some 20 years ago or something. Probably the most famous Gong book. I find the book totally irrelevant, especially today. I'm not going to go into great detail because I have a book coming out, The Way of the Gong, and I devote a good portion of a chapter to Heimrath and his book and why I don't think the book is indispensable like so many people think. And I've seen it. It's hard to find. I've seen copies go for like $100. I mean, if you can find one for $5 on eBay or a flea market or something, buy it. It's a curiosity. It's interesting. It has some good information, but that's about all I'm going to say right now because I go into great detail in my own book about this. So you can pick that up and read it, and then you'll understand why I really don't think it's indispensable at all and why I didn't mention it in the first video. Okay, so there's a look at some more books. I mean, I could go through my bookshelves and pull out 50 books, but a lot of them, as we get further from these 2 episodes in the books I've done, a lot of them get a little more fringe from things. Many of the books get more into Zen and various avenues of Buddhism, which is a big interest of mine. Many of them get more into physics, which is another interest of mine. Things like that. But if I leave you with something about things to read about musicians, read about other musicians, read biographies, so you can learn how they think, so you can learn, what their thought process is. I've read a lot of musician biographies and artist biographies, playwrights, writers, actors, all kinds of people, creative people in general, artists, dancers, whatever. I've read a lot of biographies and autobiographies on people because what interests me is their process. And as a writer, when I was really actively writing for magazines, interviewing musicians, mainly drummers, the thrust of what I was looking for is, what's your process? How do you do what you do? As opposed to, what drums do you play and what cymbals do you play and technical blah, 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 because that really doesn't matter. And it didn't matter to me, and it still doesn't. Well, I'm more interested in the process. So I read a lot of things like that. Blogs, I read a lot of blogs by different musicians. People who play clarinet, people who play cello, people who play guitar, not just drum and percussion blogs. Same thing on YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube videos by all sorts of musicians, all types of styles and instruments. Not just, I probably don't watch very much as far as actual drumming and percussion videos, because I've been playing drums and percussion 50 years. I don't know it all, and I never will, but I know a lot. So I want to get a different perspective. So I watch a lot of videos by other musicians. And it's fascinating, and it all feeds this right here, and it helps me to expand what I'm doing and gives me different perspectives. Okay, so that's the second episode of the Cuppa Time Book Club. Put your comments and questions down below, and, I'll answer them the best I can. I'll try to put links to everything down below. And if you like my series, hit the subscribe button. If you want to be notified, hit the little bell that's down there. And we will see you next time. Thanks a lot.